But we're going to begin this hour with former First Lady Michelle Obama, who is here in our studio live and in color. She is, listen to this, guys, the #1 best-selling author of Becoming. In her more recent book, it's called The Light We Carry, Overcoming in Uncertain Times. By the way, that was #1, too. She traveled the country. She talked to big names about her recent book, including there was Tyler Perry, Ellen DeGeneres, and Oprah. There's only one. You can hear those conversations on Michelle Obama, The Light podcast. The former First Lady also recorded a Netflix special with Oprah during her final stop. Here's a little sneak peek.
So we're coming to stay with you, graciously hosting us, and you said, bring your friends. And I was like, okay. And she's like, how many people? And I said, well, it's like 12. 12. And you're like, what'd you say? You were like, you don't have 12 good friends.
I did.
I was like, I do. I'm not
Who
trying
has
to stack
12
the date.
good friends?
I do. And Oprah was like, I got Gayle. And what I said was
the only person I know with 12 good friends was Jesus and the disciples. That's the only person I know.
But then you met...
And then one of them betrayed him. Okay.
But then you met my kitchen table.
Yes,
and
yeah,
you saw
was
that
fun.
I collect and keep my friends throughout life.
Michelle Obama, we welcome you to the studio. I mean, Oprah and I actually did have a conversation about this because we always say we don't have a lot of friends. I know a lot of people, but when it comes to friends, and then we met your friends, and they really are your true blue friends.
You know, over the span of a lifetime. And it's just interesting because you and Oprah have been kind of in the same business, right?
Yes.
But I have been a lawyer, a law school student, and I almost take, I have a friend from each era of my life.
Of your life.
You know, it's like I tell people you don't need a ton of friends.
I agree with that.
Leave an experience with one good friend, you're ahead of the game.
But your friends have gotten you through many things, too.
Oh,
that's the other
gosh.
thing. I know you can trust them, and when you're at the level that you are, it's very, very difficult. I want to talk about the difference between the two books because Becoming was a best-selling novel. Over 12 million sold. Drop the microphone very much. So when you started writing the second one, did you feel pressure that I have to top that, or I want to make another bestseller?
No, actually, there was no commitment in my contract. I didn't have to write the book. The book just sort of came. You know, over the course of the last few hard years of being in quarantine, dealing with COVID, all the political uncertainty. You know, I had a lot of time on my hands to just sort of stew and to mull over questions that young people in particular would ask about just managing life in uncertain times. And, you know, I told you I took up knitting.
Yes.
And a lot of the ideas came as I was learning to knit and thinking about how did I get here?
And you
what
took
are
up
the
knitting
tools?
after learning it on YouTube, you said.
I taught myself how to knit.
That surprised me, too.
Yeah,
But this is the thing about you. You have always been very candid, very authentic, very much uniquely yourself. And so many people, Mrs. Obama, at your stature, when people say, how are you doing? Oh, fine, fine, fine. But you have been very open about your insecurities, your anxieties, even your frustrations. Why did you choose to be so vulnerable? And do you regret being so vulnerable and open?
No, I don't. In fact, you know, it's the only way I know how to be me.
Yes.
And when you have to operate at a high level, I think it's easier just to be completely yourself. Then you don't have to keep up with the lie or the facade that you've kept up. But I also think it's a responsibility to people with a platform. You know, in particular, young people are watching us. And a lot of times they glamorize the lives of the famous. And they don't understand that we feel anxiety and guilt and remorse and fear. So when they experience those same natural emotions, they feel like something is wrong. Because we don't tend to share the hard stuff. I don't think it helps anyone to put on a brave face and to pretend to be something that you're not. And I never want to be that for
You've never been that person.
people.
So what have you learned about working through your own anxieties that you think could help others?
It is a practice. First of all, I've learned to embrace the fact that basic anxieties, I'm not talking about dealing with severe mental health issues, but basic anxiety is a part of life. You know, anxiety has gotten me where I am today.
What do you mean?
Not wanting to mess up at school, being anxious about doing what I'm supposed to do. You know, making sure I'm not living on the street, so I want to be able to have a job. That kind of anxiety, you know, it propels me forward. But I've also learned that sometimes I gotta just step out of the noise and know that I have to turn off the things that cause me upset. So there are times, even in the White House, where I just had to not hear anything. You know, I didn't want to hear about the country through the voice of someone else. A lot of times I let my experiences with the American people shape my attitude. And 9 times out of 10, when I based my feelings on my interactions with people, I was always in a better place.
Yeah,
because I say it's harder to hate up close.
Yes, I so
and
believe that.
people are a lot better one-on-one than we look when we see ourselves on the news or, you know, on TV.
I know. I've heard you say that, you know, when you're in the White House, did you feel tremendous pressure because all eyes were on you? And I heard you say once, we just knew we could not screw up. I mean, you had 8 years where there were really relatively no scandals to speak of.
Compared to
what we're dealing with even now.
Exactly.
I mean, did you feel that type of pressure when you were there?
Absolutely. I talk about the pressures of being the first, being an only. There's that
being
added
the other,
being the other, knowing that your successes and failures define the rest of your community and others like you coming behind you. So yes, Barack knew that he couldn't afford a scandal. I mean, he wore a tan suit and got criticized, you know?
And you know, you wore long shorts in 110-degree weather at the Grand Canyon. People said, look at her.
And I knew. We debated. We had a long debate in the plane. I said, well, if I get off in a dress, I'll look out of touch because we're going on a hike.
Yes.
But then if I walk off in shorts, some fashion critic is going to say that's a no-no. So there's, we were always mindful of the example that we set, but guess what?
What?
That's what you're supposed to be when you're president of the United States and First Lady. You should be mindful of the messages, the things that you say, the example that you set. You know, that's part of the job.
Yeah. You know, you're also very candid about relationships. And I think you speak for many women when you so candidly said, I mean, people took off on this. You know, there were years where you just didn't like him. Many spouses in this room will say, you know, there's sometimes I don't like him. I don't like her.
Yeah, so what was the controversy? It's like, why
But you said it out loud.
Like we like everybody every day. It is impossible.
But were there times that you think he didn't like you? Because I know you said, I didn't like him for 10 years. What did he say? I was wondering, what did he say when you said, you know, I didn't like him for 10 years. I was mad at that picture.
Right. No. I share these things because marriage is hard.
Yeah.
And a lot of young people quit on marriage over things that are just a part of the commitment.
Yes.
We've been married for 30 years.
I know.
You know, if I fell out with him for 10 and we had great 20 years, I'd take those odds anytime. But we glamorize marriage. And in this day and age, marriage is more about the dress and the dresses and the proposal and the honeymoon and all the stuff around it. And young people aren't ready for the real of marriage. So I think, once again, it's incumbent upon us, people who have had successful marriages, to be really honest about the fact that making a commitment to be with someone means you compromise, and compromise ain't always fun.
Yeah.
And don't add kids into the mix because they really mess up your life.
Well, let's talk about kids, because people think, God, I hope she writes a book on parenting. Honestly, because you have raised 2 very confident, not arrogant girls who are very poised. Thanks. Knock on wood.
I do that all the time.
Who are very poised, who are really generous human beings.
Yeah.
What did you want when they could have come out of the White House and been very obnoxious, and they were not? That has to do with the way they are raised. What is it that you want your girls to know, how you wanted them to move in the world? A lot of people could take lessons from this.
Gratitude, because they are way more blessed than we ever were. They had way more. And learning to parent with more was a thing I didn't know. I want them to have compassion and empathy. I want them to be independent. I want them to be able to stand on their own 2 feet, not depend on us. And the very important thing, I want them to know that their happiness is up to them.
Yes.
That the world doesn't owe them anything, and neither does anybody else. And control happens when you know how to make yourself happy, where you know how to create your own joy.
Yes.
So those are some of the things. And what comes with that are boundaries, expectations, giving them responsibilities, handing them their lives early, not being afraid of allowing them to fail, standing back and letting them sit in their failure.
And also, it's okay for them to make mistakes. We have bills to pay around here, Mrs. Obama, so we're going to have to take a break. Please don't run out like your hair's on fire.
Okay.
We're going to continue the conversation, but first, time to check your local weather. It's 8:12. We'll be right back. We're going to continue our conversation with the former First Lady. Her name, of course, is Michelle Obama. I have to say something about the book because it's called The Light We Carry, Overcoming in Uncertain Times. I really think that these are uncertain times. And I look at the things in the news recently, the 3 recent shootings, the terrible shooting in Kansas City with the 16-year-old, thank God he survived.
Yes.
A young woman in New York was shot, turning in the driveway, just normal things. Do you think that we can ever figure out a way to reconcile gun violence in this country? Because it does keep me up.
I hope and pray that at some point enough becomes enough.
What is that point?
We wondered that throughout our entire presidency, thinking that this time.
Yeah, Barack Obama said that Newtown was one of the worst days of his presidency.
Yeah.
And we still didn't get that message.
But
from
we are
Obama.
the only developed country on the planet where its citizens can have unfettered access to firearms. That is not a good thing. And more of us have to feel strongly about it, and particularly our young people. This is where democracy comes in. Voting, all this stuff is decided
Matters.
in the ballot box.
And then you've got the Supreme Court. When they overturned Roe v. Wade, you put a very poignant message about you were heartbroken. What's your reaction today as you see this a battle over abortion access continue to play out? Uncertain times, scary times.
This was to be predicted. I can't tell you how many times we talked about the importance of the Supreme Court, the importance of voting in every election. So now we are here. I am not surprised by it. It was coming.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is that our young people have to understand that just because an issue doesn't affect you today doesn't mean it's not going to matter in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah.
Voting matters. That's all I can say.
I know, and you've said it over and over. I emceed this event at Lincoln Center, Jazz at Lincoln Center for Wynton Marsalis, and just mentioning your name that you were going to be on, people went, I mean, people have such expectations and hopes that will she? I'm not even going to ask you that. But do you ever wonder, or do you ever think, when will politics leave you? Because you said, I'm not a political person. Politics isn't something I wanted. But people still hope and want you to do something.
Yeah. I am authentic. If I were going to engage in politics, I would let people know. But I am a public figure. I still care about these issues.
Yes.
I will always find ways to use my platform to speak out. That's why I'm focusing on getting young people to vote.
Yeah.
Because none of it matters. It doesn't matter who's in the Oval Office if we can't give them a Congress that they can work with.
So
if we're not managing our state houses and on, I could go on and on about it.
I know, and I'm not even pushing for you running. That ship has sailed, I get it. So what gives you joy these days, Michelle Obama? What are you looking forward to? Yeah.
So much.
In less than 30 seconds, what is it? Other than being with all of us today.
Watching my girls become the women that they were meant to be. And watching young people evolve. I mean, that's still the thing that gives me not just joy, but hope, is when I meet these young people who are really grappling with these issues in a major way. They want to have an impact. They are so full of promise. That's why I stay connected to young people, because it's the best way to remember the best of our country.
We are so glad you were here, that you came to us in the studio. You should see Klaus do on the Happy Desk. On Steadicam. There's Klaus. Michelle Obama. You can listen to Michelle Obama, the Light podcast, now on Audible, wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be right back.